When my mother gave birth to me, she accidentally severed my little private part. Seeing that I couldn't continue the family line, she abandoned me in the freezing snow to die. A hungry mother wolf followed my scent and found me. She came up to my little face, purple from the cold. But instead of biting me, she tucked me into her warm belly fur and fed me her milk, saving my life that should have frozen to death. That was until an old Taoist priest gathering herbs came across me. This old man was a famous fortune teller for miles around. Everyone called him the Old Immortal. Seeing me alive and well in a wolf's den, he simply sighed about my fate and carried me home to raise as his apprentice. 13 years passed like that. On my 13th birthday, my master finally told me the story of how the wolf saved me. I went up the mountain many times after that, but never once caught a glimpse of her. But every trip up the mountain was strange. Other kids who went into the mountains would run into snakes or wild boars, but nothing ever happened to me. Instead, every time I came down, I would find freshly dead rabbits or pheasants by the roadside. You were born on the 13th day of the 12th lunar month, frozen in the snow for 3 days and still breathing. The number 13 is your lucky charm for turning misfortune into good fortune. The villagers all called him the Old Immortal and called me 13. But only I knew that this old man, for all his immortal appearance, was stingier than anyone underneath. He only taught me fortune-telling halfway, and hid all the good food and alcohol up on the rafters, guarding it from me like I was a thief. I've always been shameless. As my master put it, my heart is bigger than the sky, and my skin is thicker than a city wall. The day I learned about my origins, I squatted on the doorstep and gnawed on half a roast chicken, and didn't shed a single tear. Not because it didn't hurt, but because crying was useless. That couple who could throw their own newborn child into the snow to feed the wolves never saw me as their son. I had no reason to shed tears for strangers. But from that day on, I went up the mountain looking for the wolf more and more often. Before, I only dared to linger halfway up the mountain, grabbing any wild game and running back down. Now I always wanted to push deeper into the mountains. My master repeatedly warned me that the stone marker halfway up the mountain carved with a wolf's head was not a place I should go, but it went in one ear and out the other. The moment he left to gather herbs, I would tuck a machete in my belt and run up the mountain. Strangely enough, no matter how deep I went into the mountains, I never once encountered any danger. Once I came across a python as thick as a bowl lying across the path, its tongue flicking in and out. Staring right at me, I gripped my machete, ready to fight for my life, but the snake just glanced at me a couple of times, and then, as if it had seen its natural enemy, twisted its body and slithered quickly into the grass, not even looking back. Another time, I ran into a wild boar over 300 pounds, its tusks sticking up high. Even the strongest hunter in the village would have given it a wide berth. The boar came charging straight at me, snorting fiercely. My legs turned to jelly. Damn, I survived being frozen by my parents, only to get gored by a wild boar. But just as the boar was only a few steps away from me, a low wolf howl suddenly came from the forest. The boar froze as if struck by lightning, screeched to a halt, turned around and ran, not even daring to look back. I stood there stunned for a long time, then called out into the forest. Was that you? The wolf who nursed me, but only the rustle of wind through the leaves answered me with no reply. When I came back down the mountain and crossed the stone marker, I saw 2 plump rabbits lying in the grass by the road, with thin, clean cuts on their necks. Their blood had drained, but their bodies were still warm. This sort of thing happened at least 10 times. That day I was carrying the rabbits home and squatting by the river to clean them. I deliberately turned the rabbit over and over, parting the fur to look at the wounds. The cuts were perfectly neat, thin as if made by a needle. Wild animals in the mountains always hunt by biting the throat in one go. How could there be such clean, precise wounds? My heart skipped a beat. I pulled out the pheasant feathers I had saved from previous trips and saw that the pheasants' necks had the exact same tiny holes. So it turned out these animals weren't just things I found. Someone had deliberately left them there for me to take. I rushed back to the yard with the rabbits. My master was sitting at the stone table, polishing his compass. He had polished it so brightly, you could see your reflection in it. I slapped the rabbits down on the table. Master, tell me the truth. How did these rabbits really die? And every time I go up the mountain, is there something following me? My master didn't even lift his eyes. He just kept wiping his compass with a rag. There are all kinds of ways wild animals die in the mountains. Why do you care so much? As long as you can eat it? Don't try to fool me. These wounds aren't from a wild animal bite. And they aren't from a shotgun either. What is really going on? And how do you always know? Every time I go deep into the mountains, the moment I cross the stone marker, you either send someone to call me home, or come up and drag me back yourself. Are you hiding something from me? My master's hand paused for a moment. He finally looked up at me. In those murky old eyes, I saw an emotion I couldn't quite read. Relief, worry, and a helplessness he couldn't hide. He put the compass back in its wooden box, tapped out his pipe, lit it, and took a puff. The smoke he blew out blurred his face. 13. There are some things you're not old enough to know. When you're a little older, I'll tell you everything, word for word. For now, just remember this. Whatever's in the mountains won't hurt you. It's the human heart that is far more dangerous and terrifying than anything in the mountains. I wanted to ask more, but he just waved his hand, stood up, and went inside. No matter how much I called, he wouldn't respond. That night, my master really did stew the rabbit, with a whole pot full of potatoes. It smelled so good my mouth watered, but as I ate, I felt like a stone was weighing on my heart. My master sat across from me, drinking and eating, watching me hesitate to speak. But in the end, he said nothing. I didn't know it then. But my master's words about the human heart being more dangerous than anything in the mountains weren't just casual talk. Less than half a month later, something happened in the village. It involved Wang Erzu, the best hunter in the village. He was over 6 feet tall, broad and strong. He could carry a whole wild boar down the mountain by himself. His courage was boundless. His wife had just given birth to a big, healthy son. She was recovering from childbirth and lacked milk. Early that morning, Wang Erzu shouldered his shotgun and went up the mountain, saying he was going deep into the mountains to hunt a roe deer to nourish his wife. But he never came back. He didn't return the first day. The villagers thought he had chased the roe deer too far and had rested in the mountains. But by the third day, there was still no sign of him. His wife sat at the village entrance holding her 1-month-old son, weeping bitterly. That's when the villagers really panicked. The old village chief organized over 20 strong men, all carrying shotguns and machetes to search the mountain. They searched for 2 full days, turning the front mountain upside down. Finally, deep in a ravine, they found one of Wang Erzu's cotton shoes and a pool of blackened blood, but no trace of the man himself. The whole village erupted. Who was Wang Erzu? He was a man who could go toe-to-toe with a wild boar. Forget ordinary beasts. Even if he had run into a bear, he wouldn't have vanished without a trace, without even a chance to fire a single shot. The villagers whispered among themselves that a mountain demon had appeared, one that devoured people. Some old women sat at the village entrance, slapping their thighs and saying that Wolf-Dwelling Mountain had legends from hundreds of years ago, that if the mountain god grew angry, he would take people's lives. For a while, the whole village was filled with fear. As soon as dusk fell, every family locked their doors tight. Even the dogs in the yards dared not bark, huddling in their kennels and shivering once it got dark. But my heart itched. Half from curiosity, half from the bravado of youth. First, I felt this incident was definitely related to the wolf in the mountains, and using the search as an excuse was the perfect chance to go deep and find her. Second, if I actually found Wang Erzu, the villagers would surely think highly of me, especially Sister Quilin from the head of the village. Maybe she would even give me a couple more warm boiled eggs. Sister Quilin was the village widow. Her husband had gone hunting 2 years ago and fell to his death, leaving her to live alone. She was pretty and kind-hearted. She always saw how pitiful I was, and would occasionally slip me a bun or a boiled egg. I loved to tease her, saying, "When I grow up, I'll marry you." It always made her laugh and chase after me. But she never actually got angry. Having made up my mind, I started preparing. While my master was taking his afternoon nap, I snuck into his room and pulled out the peachwood sword he kept hidden under his bed. I also stole a few of his protective talismans and tucked them in my shirt. Finally, I swiped a bottle of liquor he had hidden in the cabinet, tucked the machete into my belt and snuck out the door, heading straight for the back mountain. Before leaving, I made sure to look at the stone marker halfway up the mountain. My master had warned me repeatedly not to cross that marker. I stood by the marker and looked into the deep mountains. The trees were thick with shadows, dark and gloomy, but I wasn't scared at all. Instead, I felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if something had been waiting for me there all along. "Sorry, master. I'll make it up to you after I find the man," I muttered to myself, and stepped over the marker. The moment I crossed it, I knew something was wrong. It was broad daylight, the sun shining overhead, but the forest on this side of the marker was dark and overcast. Sunlight filtered down through the gaps in the leaves, but couldn't even light up the grass on the ground. The sound of the wind had changed too, moaning like a woman crying. The shadows of the trees swayed and looked like figures standing there. I tightened my grip on the machete, trying to bolster my courage. Gen 13, you were raised by wolves. The mountain god protects you, so what is there to fear? But after walking for less than an hour, I realized I was lost. I had been following the ravine, but somehow kept circling back to where I started. The stone marker was not far behind me. I refused to believe it and tried a different direction. After walking for 2 hours, my legs were sore, and when I looked up, there was the stone marker again. A ghost trap. My master had taught me, if you run into a ghost trap, don't panic. Either pee on it to break it, or curse it out, the filthier the better. Dirty things hate that. Even though I didn't have that part anymore, I could still pee. I walked over to an old tree, unbuttoned my pants and peed on its roots. Then I put my hands on my hips and shouted into the forest. "Which blind demon dares block your 13th master's path? I'll dig up your ancestors' graves, and have the wolves in the mountains gnaw your bones until nothing is left. Your 13th master is under the protection of the wolf-dwelling mountain god. Block my way again and you'll never reincarnate." I cursed until spit flew everywhere, letting out every swear word my master had ever told me not to say. After I finished, I heard a buzzing sound in my ears, and the shadows before me suddenly scattered. The gloomy wind stopped, sunlight streamed in, and the path lay clearly before me. I sighed with relief, patting my chest, thinking my master's trick really works. I continued following the path deeper in. The further I went, the denser the forest became. A thick layer of fallen leaves covered the ground, soft and silent underfoot. From time to time, I heard sounds and distant wolf howls, but the howls weren't scary at all. Instead, they seemed to be guiding me, howl after howl, leading me deeper into the valley. After walking for about another hour, I arrived at a cave entrance. The cave was hidden behind a massive boulder, the entrance completely concealed by vines. You wouldn't find it unless you looked closely. I heard whimpering sounds coming from inside the cave, exactly like a person moaning in pain. My heart tightened. I gripped my machete and slowly parted the vines, then tiptoed inside. The cave was pitch black, with a damp, musty smell, mixed with a faint scent of blood. I walked about 10 steps in, and saw a person crouched in the corner. His cotton coat was torn to shreds, his face covered in blood and grime. He was curled up, clutching his head, muttering something over and over. I moved closer, and saw it was Wang Erzu, missing for 5 days. "Uncle Erzu," I called out to him. He acted as if he hadn't heard, still huddled there, repeating the same words over and over. "White Wolf, Mountain God, don't come for me, please." His eyes were vacant, completely lifeless, like he had lost his soul. I reached out and gave him a push. He shuddered violently, jerked his head up and bared his teeth at me. Like a madman, he reached out to grab my throat. I quickly dodged back. My heart sank. Oh no, Wang Erzu had been scared out of his mind. I tried everything, coaxing and pleading, but he wouldn't listen. He just kept shrinking back into the corner of the cave, muttering nonstop about the mountain god and the white wolf. I had no choice. I couldn't just leave him there, so I crouched down and put him on my back. Wang Erzu was big and tall, and he nearly crushed me. I gritted my teeth and carried him out of the cave. Strangely enough, it had taken me over 2 hours to get here, but carrying the big man back, I reached the stone marker in less than half an hour. I didn't trip on a single rock the whole way. It didn't feel right. I kept feeling like something was following me, but the feeling wasn't malicious at all. It felt more like it was silently watching over me. I spun around several times, but only saw the wind blowing through the leaves. Nothing was there, except for one time, when I caught a glimpse of a white figure in the forest. Here one moment, gone the next. So fast it was almost an illusion. My heart stirred. I called out into the forest. "Was that you?" The white wolf didn't answer, only the rustle of wind through the leaves. When I carried Wang Erzu back to the village, the whole place erupted. The villagers crowded around Wang Erzu's door, layers deep, watching as I set Wang Erzu down off my back. Everyone's eyes were wide with surprise. My, that 13 kid found Erzu. This kid is only 13, and he dared to go deep into the mountains. So impressive. No wonder he's the old immortal's apprentice. He really has skills. I stood in the middle of the crowd, basking in the praise, my ego swelling like a peacock's tail. Especially when Sister Quilin pushed through the crowd and came up to me, slipping me 2 warm-boiled eggs, and pulling out her handkerchief to wipe the dust off my face. She smiled and said, "You're really something. Thank you for finding Brother Erzu." My face instantly turned red. I scratched my head and grinned. My heart full of joy, I completely forgot my master's warnings, and the strange things in the cave. All of it vanished from my mind, but I never expected that my act of bravery wouldn't make me a hero, but would instead bring disaster upon myself. The day after Wang Erzu came back, he went completely mad. He broke free from the ropes his family had tied him with, and bit anyone he saw, constantly shouting that the blood was coming and everyone would die. His eyes were red as a rabbit's, and he had incredible strength. 3 strong men couldn't hold him down. His family had no choice but to run and get my master. My master took his peachwood sword and went to Wang Erzu's house. He stood by the bed and looked at Wang Erzu for a long time, then felt his pulse. Finally, he shook his head and sighed. His soul is lost, his spirit scattered.